So what happens, the operation of the still, I always start over at this end. So on the left hand side over here, you've got our fates tank, so for the heads and the tails, and then on the right hand side is our hearts tank, so that's the actual good gin that we keep. The first thing that we do when we're turning on the still is I always turn on the water, because if you've not got any water circulating through your condenser, you're basically creating a pressure bomb at this end, because the pressure builds up and the cold air at this side helps pull the liquid through, and then condense it at this side. So I always work from right to left when we're doing anything. So we normally fill the still the day before we actually do the distillations. So there'll be 125 litres of grain neutral spirit will go in there, 125 litres of water, and any of the botanicals for the recipe that we're doing. And that can be up to, for the multi-shot gins, it can be up to sort of 50-60 kilos of botanicals go in there. Everything goes in through the door at the front. I'll normally come in, turn it on about 6 AM, and it will take about 2 hours to get up to temperature before we actually get any liquid across. What will happen is you'll get steam. It'll start to sort of steam. It'll condense on the inside of here first, and then you'll get the reflux, which you should have learned. I don't know how much classroom work you've already done, but if you've not been taught about sort of reflux and congeners and things like that, then the reflux starts in here. And once the temperature increases up to this point, this is a temperature gauge here. We've also got temperature gauges on these two. One of these is a that one as well, and you'll be able to see. One of these is an oil temperature, so this is an oil bath still. So what happens is we've got elements at the bottom, but rather than heat the liquid directly, they heat the oil. So we use rapeseed oil in here. So in between, so this is the inside wall of the still, and this is the sort of the outside jacket. And in there is rapeseed oil, which has a boiling temperature of 190 degrees, or actually a little bit higher than that. And so on here we've got temperature controls. This is the oil one, we don't change that, so we're always aiming for about 190 degrees. And it's a thermostatic cut off, so if it gets to 190, it cuts the power to the elements, the oil doesn't get any hotter. The idea of the oil jacket is to not create hot spots on the bottom, it's to sort of give even heating throughout. It does still, because the elements are underneath, there are still some hot spots underneath, so you do get a little bit of burn on the bottom. You can have a look in if you want to. And that's the... Sorry, the light's not great, but I'll hang that over there for you. So that's...
And this is your setting, 190 is for oil,
190
and
is for the oil, and then the 93, well, it's normally a bit lower than that. I start it off...
This is how you finish, yes? 93.
About 8, yeah. I start off at about 86.
86. Mm-hmm.
And then we're always chasing the heat up, because what happens is you've got your mixture of GNS and water, and the evaporation will start, or it'll start to boil at about 85 degrees. Then what will happen is, so once it gets to about that boiling temperature in here, you'll start to get liquid coming across from the condensing side. It comes out of the parrot speaker at that side. As this becomes less and less alcoholic, because obviously the liquid that you first get off is about sort of in the mid 80s, sort of 80 between 85 and 88 ABV coming out, and as the distillation progresses, the strength of the distillate coming off weakens, because there's less alcohol in here. And because there's less alcohol in here, the temperature of its boiling increases. So we're always just increasing the temperature gradually throughout the distillation, and it finishes at about 90. We normally finish at about 93. From a 250 litre still fill, I'll aim to yield around 125 litres of distillate that I can use. So that's taking off a little bit for the heads. Because we're a rectifier rather than distilling from scratch, we don't have to worry about sort of nasties like methanol, things like that, because that's already been taken out in the process of the creation of the GNS. If you're making your own GNS, so if you're using a grain-based wash or something to create that you're going to then ferment and then distill, you'll need to be very careful with your heads cuts, because your heads can contain methanol, but we're safe. We don't have to do that. We just do them for flavour. Partly it helps make clean flavours so you're not getting any residual flavours from the previous distillation, and partly it's just because the first things that come across tend to be quite volatile chemicals that come across first of all. They don't taste great, so I do all the judging of the heads and the tails. I know now, sort of through experience, about like timings. It's normally I'll run the heads for about 10 minutes, but I'll always just double check with taste and smell to make sure that they're that the liquid's right before switching it to the hearts tank. And again, at the end of the distillation, I'll know about how much I'm wanting to yield, so I'll know how long it'll have to run the still. This still produces about 15 litres per hour. So to yield about 125 litres, we're talking about 7 hours to run it. So I'll normally come in about 6 AM and turn it on, and it'll normally be finished before 3 o'clock. And then I'll leave it to cool, and the next day we'll dig out the still. So just some things to think about if you're putting your own equipment in. You can see there's a little drain grate down there. The still empties on this side, the drain's on that side. Just little practical things like that. So obviously this has been put into a bar, so we were restricted in what we could do. But if you're creating your own space, just think about little things like that. But if the still empties on that side, then that's the best side to have the drain on, because you've got less cleaning to do to get the liquid down the drain and things like that. It's just and so that's the sort of the introduction to the still here. As I was saying, we do mainly multi-shot distillations, so that they're overfilled with botanicals. And the reason that we do that is because from the 125 litres of distillate that we yield, I can make around 2,000 litres of gin, of bottle strength gin. If I was to do single shot distillation...
20-fold?
Sorry?
You're doing 20-fold? The botanicals are 20-fold?
Yeah. Wow. And with the... again, I didn't design the recipes for the multi-shot. They were already in place before I started, so I've just continued those. The recipe development I've done for things like our rarities, and we tend to do those because we do much smaller batches. We'll tend to do those as single shot distillations. So things like heather and honey, which is one of our rarities, and fireside wasn't, but sort of the smaller batch things that we do, we'll do. With a single shot, and that will yield 125 litres, comes out about sort of mid-70s ABV, and we will just cut down to bottling strength from there. So you're looking at about maybe 300 bottles as your total yield. The one thing to think about when if you're looking to get set up and looking at your bottles, I'll explain a bit through here. In fact, I've got some tasters if anybody would like to try.
You have to like.
Thank you very much. So yeah, so as you've been taught, liquid in here and your botanicals goes up through. This is a copper onion head, so the copper removes the sulfates. You're through here. We bypass the column. We don't use because we're making gin. We don't use the column at all. It is a hybrid still. The column is different stages of distillation, effectively, and so strips flavour out at each of those stages. Whereas we're actually wanting to put flavour into the product, so we bypass the column and just go straight through to the condenser. And the condenser, there's the parrot feed here, which has got a densometer, so it's just a little. And that gives you an idea, a really accurate idea of the ABV as your liquid's coming across. So we'll move on to doing some tasting. So I've got